What's up, everybody? Coast to Coast Special Edition podcast here tonight. I am Joey Powell. You might see a lot of famous faces around me right now as we're going to do a special edition of the Coast to Coast Live for everybody. We're going to talk about the bracket reveal, which you probably just saw at 6 o'clock on your local CBS affiliate. We're brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. Appreciate everybody making us a part of their evening, or if you're consuming this a little bit later on, we're glad that you're here too. I am Joey Powell. Look, I got the starting five of starting fives here, right? We're getting ready to make a big tournament run. We've got two wily vets and Tommy and Greg. We have got the thinker on the team and Sherelle McMillan. Sean is here to stretch your defense, and I guess I'm here to keep the GPA up. I don't know, but we've got all five of us here to give you guys hopefully a fun breakdown about the bracket which was just released. And as you saw, North Carolina, it was given the number one seed out west. Tommy has done some great work and put together the West bracket so we can show it for you there. There it is. If you're watching us live, you can see it on your screen. I want to go ahead and get rolling and ask you guys as we can. I want to go. I guess I'll go to Tommy first since he's my amazing co-host on South Carolina Live. I'm going to go to Tommy first and ask Mr. Ashley. Tommy, do you feel like North Carolina was seeded properly?
I do. I feel like when you look at this bracket, we sort of knew Carolina was going to be, once Tennessee lost, we knew Carolina would be number one in the West. And if there was any doubt from anybody that Arizona would be there too, I mean, I don't know what to tell people about this stuff. I mean, everybody in this chat knows full well that there was only one way that was going to go, and it was going to be Arizona 2 and North Carolina 1 in the West once it sort of all shook out. So I think they were seeded properly. I thought the discussion of Iowa State late was interesting, and then they weren't even the fifth seed, basically, or the first number 2 seed. So, yeah, they're seeded well, and I think they've got a good bracket. We'll get into it.
Yeah, I'll ask the same thing. I want to ask Sherelle because I know Sherelle is really he's really kind of in an ether way tuned into seedings and how they match up. And I feel like Sherelle's able to watch this thing and call shots before it happens just because I've been around him for a long time. Sherelle, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you feel like North Carolina was seeded properly?
Oh, yeah, for sure. When you look at what the committee member said, what the chair said, and talking about full body of work, of course, all the metrics, the Q1 wins, the Q2 losses, all those things, strength of schedule, they look at Kimpom, they look at Bartovic, they look at pretty much everything. And I think when you add it up, the preponderance of evidence says that UNC should have been a 1 seed because of the non-conference that they played, because of, frankly, the 2 big wins against Duke, I think, were a huge part in North Carolina kind of sealing it. Of course, Tennessee falling off and losing on Friday was a big deal. But, I think they're seated properly. Honestly, at first look, and I know you didn't ask me this, but it's not, there's years where you're like, oh man, that's a tough road. And I'm not saying this one isn't, because every year to get to the Final Four is a tough road, but there's not, to me, at first glance, that glaring like, to the point, Greg, we talked about it in 2017, 18. Sean, we talked about it last week. Joey talked about it. When we saw Texas A&M as Carolina's, I can't remember if it was 7 or 10, we immediately were like, that's not great. But I don't see that, at least on the top half of the bracket this year. So, that's kind of where I'm at. And at some point in this hour, we need to talk about Saturday, because that doesn't need to be skated by.
So I was going to actually throw down a hard no to start the show that Tommy and Dewey did such a great job putting a bow on the ACC tournament that I was trying to look forward, Shrell.
Can you ever put a bow on that?
Forward.
You're not going to ever be able to put a bow on it.
You can put something on it. I'm going to hold my tongue and not use explicit words here.
The gentleman from Union County rests.
Why don't we go ahead? and do it? Well, Sherelle clearly has some things he needs to say. So I think Sherelle
we'll give Sherelle a 2 minute unfettered chance to vent and let go of everything that happened on Saturday evening. Sherelle, your time starts now.
Yeah, it's not even venting. It's more so it was surprising just because the makeup of this team, it seems to be one that's always looking for a fight. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't look like they were interested in having a fight. And I know folks are like, oh, I think there's some coping going on with the Carolina fan base. I'll say that. The immediate reaction is, oh, well, it doesn't matter because it's the ACC tournament. A championship was on the line, something that North Carolina has won 3 times in the last 24 years. So that whole idea that it's not important, that history dictates that they need to lose an ACC tournament for the bigger goals, that's loser talk to me. That's a bunch of loser talk. So I want to get that out there for number one. I think number two, the other thing is there were some concerning signs. Sean pointed out, he kind of said last week, like, if Ingram and Ryan struggle, that's kind of the path to UNC getting ousted in the tournament. And they, frankly, I think Greg tweeted it out, they just didn't get any help on Saturday night from
No help.
excuse me, Baycott and Davis didn't get any help on Saturday night from the guys who you expected to give them the help. So the hope is, I think, if you're a Carolina fan, is that refocuses them. But it
Refocus
was
now.
it was definitely concerning, just because that was the first time I really felt like they weren't kind of dialed in or locked in. That's it. That's all I have.
Well, I'm glad. All right, so we're gonna since the pastor has now relinquished the pulpit, we're going to step away and let let Sherelle heal and let that moment hang in the air a little bit. I don't think any of what Sherelle said was wrong at all. But we've now gotten that out. Let's move on down the road towards the tournament. Sean, I want to ask you. Living on the West Coast, I feel like you get a chance to by default see more, Mountain West conference games and West Coast conference games and all these teams that we typically don't see because, at least speaking for myself, we're already in bed. I want to ask you which of these matchups do you feel like, at least in the region, and UNC's quadrant, do you feel like are the best and worst matchups? Just having taken an hour to look at it.
Well, I think the St. Mary's Grand Canyon one is one that should be a pretty entertaining matchup. I think Grand Canyon's a pretty good team, and St. Mary's, nobody was really picking them to win the tournament against Gonzaga, especially after Gonzaga embarrassed them. So I think that's a great 5-12 matchup. And then you have, really, if everything holds to path, what could be a UNC Alabama matchup in the Sweet 16. But I think that Alabama Charleston game should be, even though you're bringing two teams from the South all the way to Pacific Northwest, should be a strong one. In terms of Nevada, I thought they could make a run at the Mountain West tournament, and they got ousted early by a good Colorado State team. And then Arizona, who I got to see in person 2 weeks ago, thumped UCLA, and then ever since that, they went on a little bit of a skid. Part of that was Caleb Love struggled the past 3 games, Dylan Boswell as well. But if once again everything were to hold, there'd be a ton of obnoxious Arizona fans in Crypto.com arena for whoever that matchup may be.
Greg Barnes, as the venerable beat writer who has covered UNC in various regions, various locations, you've seen a lot of chances where you can see a situation being a good or bad matchup. Is there a style of team? I think Sean did a good job of pointing out who in the bracket, may match up or not match up with UNC. Do you feel like there's a style of team right now out there that could give North Carolina a lot of trouble? And Greg, what does that look like? What's the DNA of a starting five like that?
I think when you look at what North Carolina has done this year, they've proven for the most part they're a good defensive team, one of the better ones in the country. But there are times like what we saw Saturday night where it becomes really the RJ Davis show. I don't think Cormac really stepped up to the challenge Saturday night, neither did Harrison Ingram. And we've seen that at times this year. And so that's where Carolina can struggle. State can score the ball. They're not very good defensively. And it just worked against Carolina. So I really think when you look at a team, I mean, you look at St. Mary's. Are they great? No. But if you look at what they've done since February 1st, they're leading the country in three-point field goal percentage at 43.2%. If you get into a game with them and they're knocking down some threes and Carolina struggles a little bit offensively, that could be a challenge. Alabama would typically be one that I would say kind of the same situation because they can score the ball. they just have not played very well the last 5 or 6 weeks. And so I think Carolina really had an advantage getting them in their bracket. But you look at what Carolina has and the potential 8-9 game matchup. You got to love that if you're a Carolina fan, because Mississippi State, Michigan State, both physical teams, both pretty good defensively, really struggle to score the ball. And Carolina, as we've said, is good defensively. You're going to have to be able to score against Carolina to beat them, and I just think that really works in Carolina's favor. So a team's got to be able to score. They don't have to be great defensively; they need to be okay defensively. And so I think really for Carolina, that the biggest problems is on the lower side of the bracket when you get to like Baylor, I mean, even Clemson potentially, but Arizona, of course.
Yeah, I love what you said too about Alabama. I mean, I think that Tennessee game they played 2 weeks ago was probably the best game that they've played all season, and it's still, like you said, they were outside of that. They've kind of been hit or miss. And I agree with the comments about Baylor and Arizona as well. North Carolina, not to dig up Saturday night, but like you said earlier with NC State, State just scored and North Carolina didn't do anything to stop them. Until North Carolina sees something like that again, I agree with you. I think that's probably the easiest, your path of least resistance. I'm going to ask each of you to chime in with this, and I'm going to hot potato it around. Greg, I'll stick with you. Which region do you feel like is the cakewalk out of all four of them? Yeah, every year we always see, hey, this one's such and such has got the easiest path, and usually from IC subscribers, it's whatever region Duke's in. But for this one, I'm going to ask you, what do you feel like the easiest region or the cakewalk region is right now?
It really kind of depends on if Tyler Kolek's playing. If he's actually out, then maybe the South. I think Carolina's got a very, very nice path to at least the Elite Eight and possibly the Final Four. We've talked a lot about Carolina needing to avoid the East to get away from UConn. They're lucky tonight that they avoided the East because of so many really good teams in that bracket. So I think I'll go with the West. I think Carolina's probably got the easiest bracket right now.
I saw something. I don't remember CBS showing this graphic, but they showed something right afterwards, like based on the actual individual seeding numbers, what the total for each, what the high total was for each region. And I think the Midwest actually had the strongest total number if you're just looking at seed numbers. But yeah, I agree with a lot of folks. I think Purdue might be okay there. Sean, same thing. What do you feel like the strongest region would be right now, or the easiest region would be right now? Excuse me.
Yeah, I think strongest. Nobody's going to deny the East, but I'd go with the Midwest in terms of being the easiest. Obviously, Tennessee good as a 2 seed and Creighton as a 3, but you can look up and down that, and it's some big names, Kansas, Gonzaga, etc. But I don't think there's much to the Midwest, especially with Purdue being the number 1. So I wouldn't have minded being the number 2 in that region if UNC had not gotten the 1 seed. But the East easily the strongest, and then you can make your argument about different matchups across the other 3.
Yeah, Tommy Ashley at approximately 6:15 was already sending off Paul Revere-esque warnings about the potential massacre in Boston and what could happen up there. Tommy, I got a feeling I know what you're going to say, but what do you feel like the easiest region would be?
Midwest is the easiest region. I mean, let's be honest. Kansas is a 4, and I mean, unless Kansas is totally healthy, I'm not so sure they're a tournament team down 2 starters when they play what? Sherelle knows the numbers. They play like
6 guys.
They play 6 guys, and 2 of those guys are hurt. And so I think Purdue. I tweeted out something that got some Purdue fans in my DMs. I said the Big East or the Big Ten refs aren't going to coddle Purdue in the NCAA tournament. Well, the NCAA did their work for them, the selection committee today. I think Gonzaga's a good team. Everybody's talking about these others, but I mean, Kansas being a 4 against Purdue, I don't know if you can have an easier matchup there. But the bottom line is you still got to beat the teams in front of you, and anybody can go down. I mean, that's one thing, except for UConn, Joey, that all these regions can be tough for all the teams in them if they don't play. And and that's one thing this weekend showed us all, that anybody can be beat except maybe UConn. And I do agree that the East is loaded. The massacre in Boston. That's a good one. Maybe the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah. Well, either way, I got what you were putting down a little while ago. All right, Shrell, who's got the cakewalk?
I have to agree with Greg. I think Carolina's bracket is probably, when you factor in matchups and style of play and everything. I know we're just talking about seeding, but when you factor all that in, I think Carolina should feel very fortunate with the bracket that they got. I think the Midwest is probably the second easiest, and the only reason I put easiest in quotations because nothing is easy. We all understand that winning 4 games and making it to a Final Four is extremely difficult. That's why only 4 teams do it. That's why it's very hard, and a lot of programs have never done it. But with Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough, potentially out. I mean, we don't even know if Kansas is going to get out of the first round. Now, if those 2 guys are healthy, then that bracket changes considerably, like you said, because I do think they could beat, Kansas if at full strength. I mean, excuse me, I do think they could beat Purdue at full strength. So that I think kind of the health of Tyler Kolek and the health of Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough really impacts how I look at each individual, I guess pod or part of the bracket. But initial reaction, West is probably the most conducive to the 1 seed getting to the Final Four, in my opinion, and Midwest probably next.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of I think everybody agrees that the East is the toughest, but also knowing that UConn's been what seems to be the strongest and most consistent team in the nation all year. Um, that makes for quite a perplexing look at that region, if you know what I mean. Does everybody agree with Tommy that they feel like the East is hardest? I saw some folks pretty quickly feeling like the South was also not really a cakewalk. Anybody else want to chime in and say whether or not you feel like Tommy's on an island? Do y'all agree with the man that the East is really where the rocks are going to be thrown?
I'm not going to change anybody's opinion about the East being the toughest, but I wanted to add this. If you look at Bart Torvik, you can kind of set whatever parameters per date and see what teams are playing the best at a certain time. So we go back to February 1st. The 4 best teams in the country, according to the metrics, are UConn, Houston, Iowa State, and Auburn. And 3 of those teams are in the East. So I'll just put that out there.
And conference champions too. I mean, that's another thing is they've got 3 legit squads that just won their conference tournaments headed up to their place in Boston. Shrell, you and Sean feel the same way that the East is pretty much the in Champions League terms for all my footy heads out there. It's always called the group of death whenever they start drawing as like which group is going to be the hardest. So same situation. I think Boston would be our group of death. Sherelle, you feel the same way, or you hedging another way?
I think I might go with the South, simply for a few reasons. One, I think Houston is kind of shell shocked and maybe a little vulnerable, but they're a really good team. They were number 1 for I think more weeks this year than anyone. Look at Nebraska and the way they played. I think Greg sort through those same Bart Torvik from February 1st. I think they're in the top 10 or top 12, something like that. Nebraska's been really good for the better part of 15, 16 games. So they're a good team, and they're an 8 seed in the South. And you start scrolling down, Wisconsin, after they lost, it felt like 9 games in a row, has played much better. Duke is still immensely talented, even though they've lost 2 straight heading into the tournament, so you can never count them out. NC State, a team that no one thought was going to be in the tournament a week ago, just won 5 straight to get there. There's something to be said for momentum and getting hot at the right time. So there, you can watch out for them. Kentucky, same thing as Duke, immensely talented, even though they just lost. I do think Florida is very vulnerable considering the nasty injury they had this today to one of their forwards. And then Marquette, again, if Tyler Kolek is healthy, they're a really good team too. So to me, like if I'm Houston and I'm looking at that, even though you only have to play 3 teams, you're looking at potentially Nebraska, Duke, and either Kentucky or Marquette to get to the Final Four, and that's pretty tough.
Yeah, and you guys have all alluded to it a little bit. Like, if you get to the Final Four at all, you've somewhat proven yourself, regardless of the road. Sean, all right, last guy. Are you going to agree with Senor Ashley, or are you feeling like there's another tougher road somewhere?
No, I agree. I mean, you look at UConn, Iowa State, and Auburn, 3 top 5 teams in Ken Palm's rankings. But at the same time, I think the strength is based on those 4 at Illinois in there as well. And at the same time, I think Auburn and Iowa State are also 2 teams that are prime for upsets. All the work they did was in conference play. Neither one really did much out of conference. So all it takes is an upset here, an upset there, as we've seen every year. But at the end of the day, UConn is coming out of that bracket, whether they have a tough Sweet 16 or Elite Eight, unless something shocking happens. So it is some strength up top, but I don't foresee that East going 1, 2, 3, 4 over the next few weeks.
I'm going to guess that, and this is just me hypothesizing, but I can do that because I've got the microphone. I think the easiest trip in all of March Madness is you taking a trip to Franklin Street to get a Johnny T-shirt. I don't think that can be disputed. I think that is absolutely proven. If you look at selection, prices, quality of goods, and then their amazing customer service, I think Johnny T-shirt is probably the easiest path to victory that you're going to find this time of year, or any time of year, really. Johnny T-shirt, huge supporters of us. They're sponsoring this show. They sponsor everything that Inside Carolina does. I know Tommy's been spending a ton of time at the Bosch recently, and I'm fairly certain he has got an office in the back of Johnny T-shirt now where he is working because he spent so much time over there. He knows the value of what Johnny T-shirt brings to your collection of UNC gear. We want to make sure you patronize them, show them some love the same way they show love to Inside Carolina and all of our subscribers. Johnny T-shirt, big fans. We love them to death. Check them out, johnnytshirt.com. Use the code that you can find on the premium message boards. Get an extra 10% off top of their great prices. We appreciate them. Pause for a second. Let our national partners run some of their advertisements. I think you have to call them national partners now because that's what CBS does during March Madness. So we'll let some of those partners come air some ads right now. We'll be right back to talk a little bit more about the bracket in 2024. Stick around. Coast to Coast Podcast. Come right back. I appreciate everybody making us a part of their evening. To the 500 and change of y'all that are in here live on a Sunday night watching us, we're grateful. I'm Joey Powell. Got a huge gang of dudes with me tonight to talk about this bracket, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. Sean Moran, Greg Barnes, Tommy Ashley, and Sherelle McMillan. We've talked a little bit already about where UNC falls. We've talked a little bit about which we feel like quadrants are toughest, whose road is the easiest. Tommy, I'm gonna go to you first here. What matchups on the bracket do you feel like are the most intriguing? Like when they go through and release these game by game, I think a lot of times they do a good job of highlighting which of these brackets or which of these games could be fun. I'm going to ask you give me one matchup that you see immediately in the first two rounds. And I do still consider Thursday and Friday the first two rounds. Don't give me any of that. Don't give me any of that Tuesday and Dayton garbage. The first two rounds, Tommy, tell me which ones, give me a good game that you feel like is probably can't miss TV.
I don't know about can't miss TV, but I look at somebody I just slackjawed separately. Florida Atlantic is the exact same team, am I not mistaken, that went to the Final Four last year. And the fact that they are opposite UConn,
Great
and then Northwestern is a team that hasn't done much historically in the tournament, but it's a pretty good team. So I'm watching that one because I want to see who UConn gets in round two, and they get a Cinderella type team in there. Carolina's opposite, Mississippi State and Michigan State. To Greg's point and Sherelle's point, they struggle to score. But those teams are going to be tough physical teams for North Carolina, assuming Carolina beats Wagner or Howard.
Wear your cup for that game is what you're saying, right, Tommy?
Yeah, in those type games, here's the deal, and I'm going back to Carolina a little bit since we are Carolina-centric podcast. Until Saturday, I would not have even thought about those two teams being able to beat Carolina because Carolina will come out physical, they play physical defense, they get in your face, and they fight you. Saturday sort of changed that narrative for me a little bit, and I could be just overreacting to what I saw. But, you got a desperate team that comes in, and then Carolina's just going to think, hey, they're going to lay down, then that provides some trouble there. And I think those two teams are physical and could create some issues for North Carolina. But if I'm watching a game that I don't really care about the outcome, I'm watching Florida Atlantic and Northwestern just to see if they can rekindle the spirit they had last year, because that run last year was awesome, and it's the same guys.
Yeah, and that's folks will remember that's a team that North Carolina secretly scrimmaged before the season started down in South Florida. Sherelle, Same thing, man. What matchup are you looking at from that first 2 days of games, a round of 64, that you're like, man, this is where I'm gonna put my feet up and casually not be in the office for a couple hours.
I probably would say Dayton and Nevada. I've seen both of them a couple of times. They both have some good players. I think Darren Holmes is really the one that kind of sticks out from both those teams. But if you look at their KenPom ratings, they're pretty similar. The styles of play are interesting when you start to dig down into them. KenPom predicts it being a 1-point game, so that seems to be pretty close. It just seems like a good college basketball game. Like Dayton's offense is really, really good, regardless of conference or who they played, all that good stuff. And Nevada's defense is solid, but both got good players. Keenan Blackshear, watched him a few times. Trey Coleman, I remember seeing him in high school. Just a really good player, really strong, really solid. I like him a lot. And then, like I said, Holmes, just one of those players who's really good in college, who probably a couple of years ago maybe should have went to the NBA, but decided to stay and has become, an All-American over the last few years. So looking forward to that one. 7-10 matchups for me over the last few years have tended to be more fun than like 5-12s or 6-11s. I don't know what it is about 7-10, but that's when it definitely kind of jumped out when I saw it, the bracket.
All right, Sean, give me your boss button game for Thursday or Friday.
I mean, I'm going to go one for each bracket in the East. We'll go with Illinois, Morehead State. I think Illinois just coming off of what they did. Always good letdown opportunities after you make a run like that. And Riley Minix from Morehead State, they were, I think, the first team to clinch a bid. He was pretty impressive in their run. In the West, Baylor, Colgate. This is their fourth year in a row, usually at 14 seed. They've been able to hang tough for a little while. Wisconsin 2 years ago, but they always shoot the ball well. So could this be the year they finally break out and their coach moves on to some bigger and greener pastures? And then up in the South, going to go the 5-12 Wisconsin, James Madison. They beat Michigan State to start the year. Terrence Edwards, he struggled at the Dean Dome last year, but he was the Sun Belt Player of the Year. Fun guy to watch, along with TJ Bickerstaff and some of the guards that JMU does have. And then finally in the Midwest, another 5-12 with Gonzaga and McNeese, with Will Wade coaching that team. They've been pretty fun to watch. So I think that will be a fun and entertaining game. So those are probably 4-1s, taking some of the bigger schools and mid-majors, low majors against each other.
Greg Barnes, sir, same question.
Yeah, Sean kind of took a little bit of my thunder there with JMU. And JMU, when you start looking at what makes a potential Cinderella type team, you got to have good guard play. They do. You got to have at least some decent size down low. TJ Bickerstaff, of course, played at Boston College. They do. Are they experienced? Yes. There's not many more teams like North Carolina that rank so high in Division I experience. James Madison is 12th nationally in experience. And then you've got to be able to defend, which they do okay. And you've got to be able to knock down some shots. And they shoot 36.4% from three. So a lot of things there that are going right for JMU. And they're 31-3. So they have won a lot of games. So that's one at the top of the list. And then, of course, the other one, I'll just throw this out there, is NC State. State lost 7 of 9 games coming into the ACC tournament. They're probably not even an NIT team, and they catch fire. And granted, Virginia had one of the greatest collapses that we've seen in the ACC tournament, and then Carolina just laid an egg in a ACC tournament championship game, as Sherelle highlighted earlier. I think State probably loses by 20 against Texas Tech. I think they've just completely used up every bit of juice that they have, but DJ Horn's been playing really well. He played really well last week. And DJ Burns, when he wants it and he's got the energy, he's really good down low. So can the Wolfpack make a run? I don't think so, but maybe they can.
Sherelle, I want to throw it back to you, but I wanted to point out, I think I think Sherelle has it just wants to mention NC State a couple more times, but he did he did have something else he wanted to jump right in on. Go ahead, Sherelle.
Yeah, I don't want to be labeled as a hater or anything, so I want to get out of the way. That's my preface. But I just, and I'll probably regret this, so go ahead and clip it and save it for next week. But I just do not believe in McNeese State. I know Will Wade is a solid coach. I know he's done a great job, but I'm gonna go to my favorite segment of any podcast we do. It's called Reading. So I'm just gonna read to you some information on McNeese State. 30-3, awesome season, great for them. Their best win in the season, if you use KenPom, I know everybody doesn't go by KenPom, but it's a tool. They beat VCU 76-65 on November 6th. November 6th, the first game of the season, they beat VCU by 11 points. That's their best win against a KenPom team. Some of the other wins they have, they beat Biblical Studies, Champion Christian, Laterno.
These are all AAU teams. These are not real. These are not real colleges.
They beat Mississippi University for women 92-23 on December 5th. Since December 5th, they have not played a team within the top 100 on KenPom. They have wins over Texas A&M Commerce, Northwestern State. They have a loss to Southeastern Louisiana, who's number 303 in KenPom. They beat Texas A&M Corpus Christi, Nicholls State, and Incarnate Word. So I just don't see it, man. I know they've got good metrics and the numbers.
Shahada Wells is coming for you, Sherelle. Watch out.
Yeah, I hear it. I just don't believe it. Like I see everybody. When I say everybody, a few people like, oh, McNeese State, watch out. I don't see it. I don't buy it. North Carolina is a state where you can place wagers if you please now, and if you're of that inkling, I would like. This is not advice, but I just don't see McNeese State winning a game in the tournament. Maybe I'm wrong.
I had no
Sherelle's
idea.
going to be on it, and it's McNeese, right? They got rid of the state.
Yeah.
But
apologies to the fans down there in Louisiana.
I mean,
yeah, Sherelle's going to be on their bulletin board, Joey.
Yeah. Inside McNeese is gonna have like all sorts of memes about Sherelle McMillan in about 24 hours. I'll be honest, I had no idea that half of those schools were schools. I'm still not certain that they are. I think that you probably just listed off a bunch of prep teams from Virginia, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania. But I had no idea that you had that level of Silky Johnson in you, Sherelle, and I'm quite impressed with it because I think Will Wade's a trash human. Yeah, I think Will Wade's a trash human, and
he was just ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
maybe he was.
And
yeah,
I'm not even mad. I'm impressed at his schedule making abilities. So next thing I want to ask, and guys, I appreciate everybody kind of your willingness to hear me. I will throw one in before I go to the next question. I'm a fan of Jaden Ledee at San Diego State. They play UAB. UAB caught fire in their conference tournament too. So that's one that I'm actually going to try to check out. Guys, I'm going to ask you since Sherelle mentioned this. I don't know if you guys have heard, but apparently sports wagering is now legal in North Carolina. I don't know if you've heard this. Have you heard about this? Have you read about this? UConn or the field? Quickly, give me one answer. UConn or the field? Tommy.
UConn.
Sherelle.
The field.
Greg.
No doubt the field.
Sean.
I want to say the field, but UConn.
Wow, so we split there. I'm actually going to say the field just because I'm playing numbers here. It has nothing to do with because I still think UConn's the best overall top to bottom team in the league, and who knows if I say that I think that if I say that I don't think UConn's good, then maybe Danny Hurley will show up at my house and yell at me and have me removed from my kitchen. Who knows?
He will fight a fan. Let me ask you this, Joey: the four number one seeds or the field? Ask that question.
I like. I'll take the 4 number 1 seeds there. Sean.
Oh, I just said UConn, so I'll take the.
That counts. All right.
Take
Greg?
the 4 1s, but Kentucky.
Greg, 4 1s or the field?
Yeah, I think like 90% of national champions have been 1 seeds. So I'm gonna take the 4 number 1s.
Sherelle. Oh, Sherelle's looking up. He's thinking.
Field.
All right.
Wow.
Love it. So guys, before we get out of here, I do want to take a couple of seconds and hit 2 more questions that are UNC centric. Obviously, we want to play the hits for our subscribers and the folks that are tuning in. If blank happens, then UNC's ceiling is what? So a little bit of fill in the blank, a little bit of short answer. Greg, I'm coming to you first on this one, man, because this feels like it could be one of your deep dives. But if UNC does X, then their ceiling is Y. Fire away, sir.
If UNC does something, their ceiling is okay. I mean, I think we can go even deeper than just North Carolina. I think if Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram combine to shoot 40% from three in the NCAA tournament, North Carolina will win the national title.
Love it. Go shooting for the moon early on. Tommy.
Greg kind of stole it. I was going to say Cormac Ryan only. If Cormac Ryan shoots 40% from 3-point range, or 35%, if Cormac Ryan shoots 37.2% from 3-point range for the tournament, Carolina can win it all.
Somebody literally in the chat just said 38%. I know that Sean's been all over what that number is all year. Sean, give me yours. If UNC does blank, then their ceiling is what?
UNC can shoot over 50% from two in all their games. Their ceiling is to get to the Final Four. You go numerous other directions with Cormac and others, and then at the same time, throw another one. If LA Cadeau could get to 10 points, the ceiling is the Final Four as well.
All right, Shrill. Last one. Give me a good one. If UNC blank,
I'll say
then their ceiling is?
If they guard for 40 minutes, their ceiling is the national championship. I think the offense will come around. They have enough talented players to score enough to beat teams, but it's really going to come down to, can they get a stop when they need one? They weren't able to do that on Saturday. They didn't do it against Kentucky or UConn. So I know that's a long time ago, but to me, that's it. Like, if you can get stops, I think they have enough on offense to get to 75, 76, 77 points and win a close game.
And I'll dive in here too. I think it's and I love that you guys went to Cormac Ryan immediately, because UNC's done really well when they've had three guys score, right? And it just so happened against NC State it was just two, and really it was just two guys taking all the shots. So I think if UNC can have that third guy averaging around 12 or more points during the tournament, then I think it's a Final Four run. That's kind of my read on it. All right, last question, and then we're going to get to some 2 cents. I'm actually going to let Tommy and Greg play the 2 cents game tonight, since they're on the coast to coast. That's your reward for being a part of this tonight, gentlemen. And shout out to the almost 600 people that are with us live. We appreciate you being here. If you're listening to us, in your podcast feed, we're glad you're here as well. We just want to make sure you are subscribed to Inside Carolina's YouTube. So take a second and do that. If you're listening to us in your car, don't do it while you're driving. Wait till you get to a stoplight or somewhere safe, but make sure you subscribe to IC's YouTube feed. That's where we're doing this show live tonight, and we just got over 21,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel, which is huge. So if you're already subscribed, we love you. We appreciate you. If you're not, you got a chance to join the Cool Kids Club and do that. All right. One of the big things that I saw circulating after North Carolina's exit in the finals of the ACC tournament was people, again, Sherelle and I try to harp against this a lot about being a prisoner of the moment. And it felt once again that people were in this place of wanting to put a stamp on the season, well, knowing that the big dance is still coming. So what I want to ask all of you guys, I'm going to go clockwise as I see you on my screen. So Tommy, you're first. The tournament and the season will be a success if blank happens.
It already has been. And I said that on the message board, and it's probably my most liked post ever. Is unless you've been asleep since March of 2019, if you don't think the season's been a success thus far, I don't know what to tell people.
Yeah.
I mean, beat Duke, win the ACC regular season. This team has been bad for the last 3 years, but for 6 games in March 2 years ago. So the season's already been a success, but to keep it in the moment and be a prisoner of the moment, I think you need to get to the second weekend for the fan base as a whole to consider it a success, even given the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and I want to couch that. I did see that post, Tommy, and I think you're dead on. Like, the season's already a success, but if we're going to try to humor the folks that are still a little perturbed or got a little chafing going on. We want to make sure we're addressing them too. Greg, this tournament or this season is success if ...
Yeah, so I'm gonna bend this one, Joey. So I apologize in advance. I completely agree with Tommy. I think if you win the ACC regular season, that means you're the best team in the ACC. That should be the goal every single year. The fact that Carolina got to the ACC championship game in the tournament, yeah, that's when you'd like to have back. That wasn't necessarily the best performance, but they won the ACC regular season crown, and so for me, that means the season is a success. Because of that, I'm looking at the NCAA tournament as a separate entity, and I'm gonna elevate the stakes a little bit. North Carolina is the number 1 seed. Since the tournament expanded to 64 teams in 1985, Carolina has been a number 1 seed 13 times. 9 times they've gotten to the Final Four. I'm gonna give you the other ones. 2012 they got to the Elite 8. Well, they have Kendall Marshall. He doesn't get hurt by Creighton. That team's probably going to the Final Four.
Yep.
2019, if the team doesn't get the flu, good chance that team gets to the Final Four. 2007, I mean, let's just call it what it is. The team crapped the bed against Georgetown. That game should not have gone to overtime. They should be in the Final Four.
Man, you're giving some people some bad juju, some bad nightmares tonight.
And then just 1994. Just a shocker.
Bill freaking Curley.
Bill Curley, yeah, right. I mean, right. But that's it. I mean, every other time they got to the Final Four. And we talk about this a lot on the message boards, and I've tried to make the point. Carolina has not had success in the NCAA tournament because they were the number 1 seed. They were a number 1 seed because they were arguably the best team or one of the 4 best teams in the country. And the best teams in the country, even though this is a single elimination tournament, they have the most success. It's been proven time and time again. Carolina is one of the 4 best teams in the country entering this tournament. And so because of that, because of the season that Carolina's had, the expectation needs to be get back to the Final Four. Now, if they fall short and get to the Sweet 16, that does not mean the season was not successful. That's not what I'm saying. We've already determined the pre-NCAA tournament part of the season was a massive success. But now that you're here, everything that you've built up to, there's no reason for this team not to make a legitimate run to the Final Four. And as Roy Williams used to tell us all the time, once you get to that final weekend, all bets are off. Anything can happen. But there's no reason for this team not to make a legitimate push to the Final Four. I think they should at least get to the Elite 8. And then unless, Caleb Love does Caleb Love things, I think this team has a really good chance to advance.
And that's why we love having you on Inside Carolina, because you come up with those sorts of analyses and those sorts of storylines. I mean, Sherrell was trying to high five you through the screen. I know my man. I know his reactions. He was as close to passing the hat as you're going to find. Sherrell, I'm gonna ask you the same thing, man. Give me your answer to that same question about the success, to or from the season. What does North Carolina need to do for the remaining part of the season to define success for themselves?
Yeah, the esteemed gentleman from Gastonia pretty much said everything.
Gas house, yes.
Say. Yeah. No, I mean, the regular season was a success. So cut that. Move it along. It was a success. No questions asked. Anybody who says it wasn't is wrong. However, and you can call me prisoner in the moment if you want to, but the way Saturday transpired, I think, does change the math, at least for me, in what I need to see from them in the NCAA tournament to consider the season a success. Because, I'll be frank, losing to a team like Duke or a random team like Boston College in the ACC tournament championship game probably wouldn't have garnered much reaction just because it happens. But the team it was against, the circumstances in which it took place, and how North Carolina played, I think were a combo that has to be paid attention to. So for me, when they lost that game, it turned to, okay, you better make the Final Four, or you can't look at the entire season as a success. The regular season, 100%. Again, no questions asked. But I think the way Saturday transpired has changed things just a little bit for me personally. I'm only speaking for myself. I'm here to give my personal opinion, so I'm giving it. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think they need to make the Final Four. They're a 1 seed. They've got 2 games in Charlotte. They have a chance to play a team that is not good defensively, even though they can score if all the seeding holds. And then, you take your chance against potentially a number 2 seed in the Elite Eight. I don't think one of Carolina or Arizona will be in the Elite Eight. Again, personal opinion. I don't think that matchup's going to happen. But they need to make a Final Four. I think need might be a little too strong, but I think Final Four is a reasonable expectation.
And that sounds like a man who's been trying to drink bleach for the last 24 hours to get a certain taste out of his mouth. But I don't discredit anything you just said. It is to what you and Greg said about compartmentalizing, the prior 30 whatever games, and then this next little stretch. I think that's a unique way to look at it, and I love that y'all put that spin on it. That's why you guys are here. Sean, all right, we're down to the last few seconds. You're going to the line, 2 shots to make it a 3-possession game. You gonna hit these or what?
Well, I agree with all the above, but for this team, I mean, I think we saw it in the ACC tournament coming into the year, preseason ranked anywhere from 18 to 20 in that range, which you're looking at any the 4 seed-ish, 3 to 4 seed, and I think they've proven, once again, only 3 losses in the ACC. Absolutely tremendous what they did during the conference play, the 2 Duke games, Tennessee, et cetera, getting to the ACC tournament. So especially going to the Final Four, I think that should be, when you have a guy like RJ Davis and Armando returning and what they've been able to put around them, I think Final Four, getting a championship should be the expectation. But I've been so scared of the second round, no matter who they're going to play for pretty much the whole season. And I felt like I saw that play out against NC State. So I'm hoping that it came a little early when there's still a chance to have another game. But when you look at playing Pitt, they played a team that didn't make the tournament. And then they played NC that was tied up with 4 minutes left. And then they played NC State, a team that had to win to get into the tournament. And they got beat pretty good the second half. So I think if they're playing as well as they can, we'll be talking next week about the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matchups. But at the same time, the second round still really concerns me. This team has been always one game at a time, given some of the scoring lulls that they can go through, or some of the offensive issues that we have seen. And I think the matchup, whether it is Mississippi State or Michigan State, there could definitely be worse ones. But you look at Michigan State, Tom Izzo, except against UNC, always tends to do a little better than expected. They're a top 5 preseason team. They have some strong guards. And, for me, success looks like us talking next weekend and previewing some Sweet 16 Elite 8 games. So I'm going to keep it there and focus on getting out of this first round.
That's my man, always bringing it back to the show. Love that. Love that he's tied the show into it somehow. All right, y'all know that we always like to wrap the Coast to Coast with our 2 cents. And as our esteemed guests, Tommy and Greg, are here, we're going to allow them to do it too. I'm going to only require you guys give us 1 penny apiece. So be thinking about that while I let all these fine folks know about Congruity. Y'all know that we've got a great starting 5 right here on the screen for you tonight, right? Myself included. If you have a team that you are trying to manage or that you're trying to help get the most out of in the business world, you need to make Congruity part of your team. Congruity absolutely will help handle your benefits and your payroll and a lot of the HR headaches that can derail and distract you from getting to the Final Four. You need to let Congruity give you that free business assessment that you can find at congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. They'll be able to tell you how they can help you. They'll be able to tell you how they can help you game plan for your small or medium-sized business, take some of the payroll, the benefits, the human resources type stuff off of your plate so that you can focus on actually winning the game and growing your business and scaling and focusing more on other parts that are really why you got into the business to begin with. Congruity HR, we love they sponsor us. They're a national brand, but they absolutely will support you just like a neighbor will. Congruity, we love them, support them. We love how they support us. Check them out, congruityhr.com, and that assessment is congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Tommy, give me 1 penny brought to you by Congruity. Give me your 1 penny that you want to add before we get out of here.
Winning games when it matters in a sudden death situation. How many people on this team have done it for North Carolina in the NCAA tournament? Baycott and R.J. Davis, Cormac Ryan several years ago when he hit up Alabama. How many more? Has Harrison Ingram ever played in it? As pressure cooker as it's going to be? That is the question. And that run 2 years ago should help RJ and Armando. But this team has got to learn how to win against teams that are desperate, against teams that come out and meet their intensity level. And Carolina has to realize that you got 6 games for history. Everybody always talks about a seat at the table for Carolina. And if Baycott and RJ and Baycott want that seat at the table, they cannot let what happened Saturday in DC happen again, or it'll end on a bad note. I think that's what I'm looking at, is how do they fare when it comes down to it? Can they win a game as a team when it's a do-or-die situation? And we'll find out very shortly.
For sure. Hoping that the times will be released relatively soon, but North Carolina will play in Charlotte on Thursday. We've already seen that. Look, I love that, Tommy. I think that, your point about Harrison Ingram's a great one. I don't think that, Stanford versus Oregon State on a Thursday night in Palo Alto is anywhere like what they're probably going to see if they make a deep run here. Greg, give me 1 penny, and I'll put you and Tommy's together for 2 pennies.
Well, I think Tommy's point is fantastic. I mean, was there anybody in the rotation for North Carolina this season that played in the NCAA tournament last year? Am I missing anybody? Because I can't think of anybody. So I think that's a relevant point. And I think Sean's comments there at the end were absolutely spot on. And I think it really speaks to the fact that this North Carolina team, more than a lot of the previous number one seed teams, has really kind of punched above its weight class. This is not the 1997 team that just has a bunch of NBA talent. This is not the 09 team that had all kinds of talent that had been to the Final Four the year before. And this is kind of a gritty team. So I do think there are some concerns, especially at what we saw them do in the ACC tournament. I'll add this, though, since I'm not going to steal other people's points and claim them as my own after the fact. When you're looking at the NCAA tournament, we get wrapped up in Cinderellas and all these upsets and all this stuff. If we go back to since the tournament expanded in 1985, number 1 seeds have won 25 titles. Number 2 seeds have won 5, 3 seeds have won 4, and then 4 seeds have won twice. And then you kind of get down to some of the fluky stuff with Villanova, of course, winning, and then I think a 7-1 and a 6-1. What history has told us is that number 1 seeds are far and away the most likely to win the NCAA tournament because those are the best teams in the country. And then you get down to the 2 and 3 and maybe even the 4 seed line. Those are the teams that are legitimate national championship teams. I'm not going to get in a soapbox about the whole conversation about expanding the NCAA tournament, because anybody who thinks that Virginia can win 6 games in a row against legitimate competition is insane. It's insane. They can't do it. They should not be in the tournament. We need to reduce the number of teams. I'm not going to go. I'm sorry to go off on that rant.
No, get fired up. Do you, champ?
But when you're picking your brackets this week and you're really thinking about, okay, who can legitimately win the national championship, go no further than that 4 seed line, because that's pretty much it. And it's probably going to be the 1, 2, or 3 line that does it. I know UConn won last year as a 4. But those are your teams to really circle and keep an eye on. And North Carolina is in that group. And that's one thing we've talked a lot about this year is, North Carolina wants to make the NCAA tournament. Yes. That they've been a bubble team for 4 years prior. That's not where North Carolina deserves to be. But to be really in consideration, don't just get in. I mean, let's be one of the top seeds. Carolina has done that. So Carolina is in the conversation to win a national championship. That's the goal. I mean, that's exactly where you want to be. They're in a good bracket. But don't get too crazy with some of those upsets and some 6 seed making a magical run, because it's not going to happen.
Greg, I think one of your friends in the chat, M Barnes 915, makes a great point that last year all the lower seed magic happened. So makes sense that it would kind of vacillate towards chalk this year. But yeah, don't overthink it. I love that. I love that notion, Greg. And you're
Virginia
really,
sucks. Virginia
yeah.
sucks.
You're speaking. See, now you're sitting here speaking to Sean Moran's heart now, because that's the type of thing that gets Sean's cheeks all red and makes his heart aflutter. Sean, give me 2 pennies, man. Brought to you by Congruity.
You're certainly right about that, Joey, and they should not have been in. Agree with Greg on that one. First one, going back to probably one of our favorite sayings on Coast to Coast, ball movement. I thought they were severely lacking that during the ACC tournament. Really in the first 4 minutes, I would have loved to have seen Hubert call a timeout or make a sub, because it just wasn't what we've seen Carolina play. And when you're coming in where it's one loss and you're done, you can't avoid going several minutes where you're just trying to figure things out. And I think ball movement, making sure that everybody's getting involved, you're not settling for 3-pointers. Harrison Ingram, I think he was taking around 70% of his shots in the ACC tournament were 3-pointers. That's not what he needs to get going unless wide open. So look to get him some easier baskets, some touches in the paint, etc. Look to get Elliott some driving lanes, and then everything will open up for RJ and Armando, as long as you're keeping them involved. So ball movement, really important, especially as you get through the different games. And then in terms of the second penny, 3-point shooting. I think we've seen a team that has been able to defend the 3-point extremely well this year. We've seen a team that has been, for the most part, been able to shoot the ball, but they did struggle. So who's going to step up? Are they going to be able to get RJ good looks? And if they were to advance, are they making sure that nobody gets hot? Because they do have the tendency, especially from guards, of letting guards, once again, like a Tyson Walker, go off and get hot from the 3-point line, or you can go down. So 3-point line to me, as well as ball movement, are 2 of the things that I'll be looking for this weekend, so that we are hopefully having that conversation next week.
Yeah, there's a guy at the top left of the screen right now that was hosting a post-game show last night that nailed it when he said there was a lot of guys in white watching RJ Davis last night. And that wasn't ball movement. That was dudes just throwing RJ the ball and getting out of the way, which is a lot of the hero ball that got him in trouble the year before. Love the point about ball movement. I think that's great, Sean. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Sherelle, 2 pennies to get us out of here.
The first thing, this is not a penny, but Shaquille Moore plays for Mississippi State. So everybody always looks for the guy who wasn't recruited by Carolina from North Carolina who could destroy them in the tournament. So he's your candidate if that matchup were to come to fruition. He was at NC State before. So my 2 pennies, Joey, you asked us I think it was like January 28th. You said North Carolina's played great defense these last 10 games. Is this a defensive team? I was like, no, they're not a defensive team. Blah, blah, blah. The offense will be better. Blah, blah, blah. They are a defensive team. And so the way they're going to win is collectively play great defense for 40 minutes. The offense will take care of itself somehow, some way, between Armando Bacot, Cormac Ryan, Harrison Ingram, and RJ Davis. But they have to play great defense and be engaged for a full 40 minutes. If they do that, I really do believe that they will be in the Final Four. Second penny, as frustrating, I would say, for the fan base as Saturday night was, I do want to take a step back and just want everybody to think about where we were as a podcast talking about North Carolina at this exact moment last year. We were doing a wrap-up show on the season.
It was a freaking post-mortem an hour later. Yes.
I was getting text that, hey, Caleb Love just had his meeting with Hubert Davis and he's not coming back. We knew that. I can say that now, a year later. We knew that the night of, because it was already done. They had already started the process of moving on from that roster. So, I had questions. I'll be frank. It was like, is Carolina going to be looking for a new coach next year if they don't make the tournament again? I think that was a legit question to ask at that point. It was, who's going to be on the team? Is RJ Davis going to leave? Is Armando Bacot coming back? There were just so many questions that had to be answered. And I think through 33 games of a regular season ACC tournament, they resoundingly answered all those questions and more. They have Carolina back on solid footing. They have great transfers who came in. They have Harrison Ingram, who, again, I'll call him the most Carolina player to not initially commit to Carolina of all time. They have him. They have Carolina back being where it's supposed to be, where it's traditionally been. So I just want everybody to, as upsetting as Saturday night was for a lot of folks, just remember where you were a year ago tonight, because the program was in disarray. Honestly, it was in disarray. we weren't sure what was going to happen. I think you could have coin flipped it, and they get a couple of transfers that they didn't get, and the season's a disaster. And it's like, well, are they going to keep Hubert Davis around? And they're going to give him a 4th year? But instead, I think you feel comfortable that you have your coach of the future, and you know that he can navigate the portal. You know he can recruit well, and you've seen him grow as a coach. So that would be my main takeaway in starting to think about tonight versus last year. Is just like an incredible amount of growth, not just from the players on the team. Talk about Seth Trimble, Jalen Washington, RJ Davis, Armando Bacot, but also from the coaching staff and how they operate and how they put together a team.
That's how I know you and I are good people, because I wanted to wrap this show hearkening to the show we did 1 year ago tonight, in a sense that we were doing an impromptu post-mortem after North Carolina not only got left out of the field, but decided, all right, we're not going to take an NIT bid either, and we're shutting it down. So yeah, a lot has changed, and I would challenge folks that are watching this, like, it's okay to be mad after a loss, but let's try to look at the bigger picture and look where things are going from a trend perspective. When you look at that, and Sherelle, you made a good point. I think earlier this week on Twitter. Look at what North Carolina did the entire month of February up until Saturday night. I mean, they did what they were expected to do. They dropped a couple and then rebounded to go win 7 straight or something like that. I mean, that's not exactly easy pickings, especially when you're looking at trying to win a conference regular season championship with North Carolina. They won games that they had to win and stretch things out. So absolutely, just remarkable what's happened in 1 year. And we will see what happens. Times should be released relatively soon. I don't think it is out yet, but obviously it's there. Inside Carolina will have it very, very soon, as soon as the times for Thursday are released. But North Carolina will be playing the winner of Wagner and Howard. Is that right, guys? I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's who it was. Wagner and Howard on Thursday in Charlotte.
Towns, baby.
and you got to mention Sean's comment in the chat. The
Wojcik Bowl. Yeah, the Wojcik Bowl. Sean Moran, which is why we pay him the medium bucks, is all over it, in a sense that he noticed if Michigan State beats Mississippi State, North Carolina wins their first round game, it'll be Paxson Wojcik versus Papa Wojcik, because his dad, Doug, former UNC assistant, is now an assistant at Michigan State with Tom Izzo. So absolutely going to be.
Everybody thought they were setting up Carolina versus Caleb Love. It was really Paxson versus his daddy.
This is absolutely, that's the narrative, Tommy. The narrative is the battle of the Wojiks. It's Wojik Palooza is what CBS really wants to put on TV to get all the eyeballs. Look, man, I have appreciated the hell out of y'all being here tonight. Greg and Tommy for jumping in and having some fun with us. Sherelle and Sean always bring it the way you guys do. Hey, the almost 600 folks that joined us tonight, love doing this. I mean, I wish we could do this more often, but special night, special show. Again, if you have not, please subscribe, rate, review us, all that good stuff. It helps us with our advertisers. And also, if we're not doing any good, let us know that too. Email Ben, email Tommy. Just let them know that you'd like us to see do X, Y, Z a little bit better, and we'll step our game up. But until then, for Tommy Ashley, for Greg Barnes, for Sherelle McMillan and Sean Moran, I am Joey Powell. We have been the Fab Five discussing this year's 2024 bracket reveal. We'll catch you next time. Thank you to Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring, for Congruity for sponsoring, for John Siegley for producing. We'll see you very, very soon. Another edition of the Coast to Coast podcast.